She listened without blinking, then tapped one manicured finger against the desk, thinking. So, a procedural mix-up? Not creative error? Exactly, I said quickly, but then immediately worried I sounded defensive. I should have double-confirmed the sync, though. That part's on me. Claire's silence was unnerving and oddly comforting all at once, like a moment of still water before a decision sinks in. Finally, she nodded. All right, I'll need a full chain of custody log before your end of day. IT can help you trace file versions. The client's upset, but not irrevocably so. So long as we fix it fast, it's survivable. Survivable. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Claire's eyes softened for a heartbeat. You're learning our chaos in real time, Emily. No one escapes their first fire. Her lips twitched almost imperceptibly, a ghost of reassurance. Now go put that passion to better use. And back at my desk, adrenaline mingled with determination. I called IT, begged their system engineer to dig through timestamp logs, and stayed hunched over my keyboard until the office began to empty. Around 7, I found the culprit. An automated backup had overwritten the newest file the night before because our system timestamp defaulted to old metadata. Technically no one's error, but still mine to fix. When I forwarded the evidence to Claire, I half expected an email response. Instead, she appeared beside my desk 15 minutes later, sleeves rolled up, takeaway cups in hand. Dinner, she said simply, handing me noodles. Crisis protocol. We ate cross-legged on the floor, between cubicles, like exhausted soldiers. The tension from the morning melted into quiet camaraderie, punctuated by the slurp of noodles and the hum of city lights beyond the windows. I'm sorry about the first day again, I blurted when the silence grew too gentle. Claire looked mid-bite, paused, then shook her head with a smile. If that's the worst thing that ever happens between us, we'll be very lucky. Her tone was light, but her eyes lingered on me a shade longer than seemed purely professional. After we salvaged the Vega disaster, and the client sent an almost sheepish apology for system confusion, the air in the office shifted. People began stopping by my desk, asking for advice or files. Claire started inviting me to client pitches, sometimes locking eyes during presentations as if silently cueing me to jump in. I began sweeping again, though my dreams often replayed that silver sedan and the way my voice had cracked in righteous fury. Strange how shame and tender possibility can coexist in one memory. 2 months passed. One late Friday evening, Claire asked whether I wanted to join a few team members for drinks. Somehow, everyone else bailed, citing partners or deadlines, leaving just the two of us weaving through a downtown bar noise sweep. Away from spreadsheets and key performance indicators, she carried herself differently. Laugh sharper, posture looser, edges rounded by candlelight, and the hiss of carbonation. I learned she played piano as a child, and she once almost joined a traveling jazz ensemble before corporate life consumed her. She called younger versions of herself ridiculously idealistic, then added, "You remind me of that sometimes." The words startled me, flattery and vulnerability in one breath. "Is that good?" I asked. "Depends," she replied with a grin, swirling her drink. "Idealists change industries or burn out trying." Her gaze flicked toward me. "Something tells me you'll do more of the former." That night, I walked home buoyed by the tiny constellation her compliment lit inside me. But office dynamics are treacherous terrain. The following week, rumors circulated that our agency might merge with a larger firm. The phrase "department downsizing" hovered like thunderclouds. Claire looked stretched thin, always on calls, articles of merger paperwork sprouting across her desk like invasive ivy. One evening, she summoned me. Her tone was quieter than usual. "Emily, if the merger finalizes next month, some of the junior positions may shift. I'm fighting to keep our team intact, but I need you to prepare an independent proposal, something that shows your strategic value." The words "strategic value" jabbed a little, So clinical, so survival-laden. But I nodded. I'll make it stand out. Over the next week, sleep became optional. I lived between coffee mugs and PowerPoint slides, rewriting my proposal until the words hummed. The night before the presentation, I stayed in the office past midnight. Claire had long gone, or so I thought, until soft footsteps echoed behind me. "You're still here?" she asked, appearing at my shoulder with that same citrus scent. "You too," I countered, without turning. She chuckled. "Touché." I confessed, I want this to be perfect. I don't want them to think hiring me was a mistake. She stood quietly for a moment, then said something that has stayed etched into me ever since. Perfection is overrated. Integrity, drive, empathy. That's the trio that builds trust. The rest we can polish later. She placed a hand lightly on my shoulder, a simple human gesture, and for a fleeting second, I forgot hierarchy altogether. The next morning, adrenaline carried me through the presentation. My proposal was concise, anchored in data, but animated with storytelling. When I finished, Claire caught my eye across the boardroom with a subtle nod that said, "You did it." A week later, the merger finalized, and the announcement email declared my promotion to project lead under her department. The entire office congratulated me, but what I remember most is Claire stopping by quietly afterward, sliding a small box onto my desk. Inside was a miniature silver toy sedan, the same make and model as hers. "So you never forget your unconventional interview," she quipped. I laughed until my ribs hurt. When our eyes met, there was that glint again. Professional respect tangled with unspoken fondness. In the months that followed, our working rhythm became almost telepathic. She'd start a sentence, I'd finish it with a chart. I'd draft a pitch, she'd fine-tune the hook. Once, during a late client dinner, someone joked that we shared a brain. "Just traffic-free telepathy," Claire said dryly, and under the table, my collapse of laughter nearly derailed the meeting. Still, some lines we never crossed. There were glances that lasted too long, inside jokes that brushed the edge of something tender, but we both pretended professionalism was armor strong enough. Maybe it was, or maybe it wasn't meant to last forever. About a year later, Claire accepted an executive offer overseas. Her goodbye speech was poised as ever. No dramatics, no sap, until she looked my way and said, "Some lessons arrive through chaos. I'll always be grateful for mine." The room laughed, not realizing the private subtext humming between us. After she left, her office remained empty for weeks. On her desk, hidden under a stack of forgotten folders, I discovered a post-it in familiar handwriting. "Keep yelling, but only for things that matter." I smiled through the sting of tears, folded the note into my wallet, and walked outside into the morning traffic, which for once felt like nothing to fear. That day marked exactly 2 years since the Tuesday I'd lost my temper on Maple Avenue. The horns were still loud, the world still impatient, but as I waited at the light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, steadier, surer, a version of myself I built through errors and endurance. When the light turned green, I whispered, "Drive safe, Claire," and eased forward, no yelling required. A year had passed since Claire left, yet her absence clung to the office like a scent that refused to fade. There had been new managers since, competent, even kind, but none carried her peculiar combination of precision and mischief. The first few months were like walking through echoes. People still quoted her phrases, still arranged reports the Claire way. I moved through it all with a strange duality, pride for what we built, ache for what had gone silent. Career-wise, I thrived. The Vega account grew into one of our most profitable campaigns, and my team expanded. I found myself using the same calm authority Claire once wielded, listening before judging, asking why before how. Sometimes in mid-sentence during a meeting, I'd catch myself tilting my head the way she did, that small cue of curiosity. Each time, it made me smile. The traffic rage rookie had become someone people called for advice. It felt surreal. Then one Tuesday morning, because the universe likes symmetry, I was rushing again, late for a city-wide marketing summit across town. My printer had eaten the presentation copies, my shoe had declared war on my heel, and I was balancing an impossible breakfast sandwich as I merged onto the expressway. For a flicker of a second, I thought, "Don't tempt fate, you've done this dance before." I chuckled aloud at the memory of the silver sedan, my cautionary origin story. The summit buzzed with old colleagues, rival agencies, brand reps. I navigated the crowd with a practiced handshake and an internal playlist of polite enthusiasm. During a break, as I stood in line for coffee, a voice behind me said, "Still not a morning person, are you?" It was smooth, unmistakable, and for a moment my knees forgot their function. I turned. There she was, Claire. Hair shorter, expression softened by travel, and maybe the ocean she'd described in her postcards. She looked the same, and completely different, like a photograph caught between memory and present. "Claire?" I blinked stupidly. "In the flesh," she said with a grin. "I'm consulting for the European branch now. They asked me to sit on the innovation panel." She glanced at my conference badge. "Project Lead Strive Marketing. Looks good on you, Emily." We stepped aside, two ghosts rediscovering gravity. The conversation began cautiously. Updates, mutual colleagues, surface-safe topics. But soon laughter resurfaced. That easy rhythm we used to share. She told me about Barcelona mornings, about learning to slow down. I spoke about mentoring interns and how terrifyingly competent they were. When the next seminar bell chimed, she clasped my forearm lightly. "Dinner tonight?" she asked. Not tentative, not commanding. An invitation carved in familiarity. We met at a quiet rooftop restaurant overlooking the city's sprawl. From up there, the arterial chaos of headlights looked almost poetic. The wind toyed with her hair. She smelled faintly of citrus still. "I see you survived without me," she said, amusement curling at the edges. "Barely," I replied, and she laughed, tilting her head back the way I'd missed. For a while, we just sat listening to the hum below, two people who had navigated storms in different hemispheres, but somehow ended up sharing the same calm. She asked, softly, "Do you ever think about that morning? The one with the horn?" "Every time I merge," I admitted. It was the most embarrassing start to a career ever, and also the best catalyst. Her smile turned reflective. "You know, that day taught me a few things too, about temper, about humility." I remember thinking, here's a woman unafraid of honesty. Even if it arrives loud and unfiltered, the compliments settled between us like spark dust. For the first time, there was no hierarchy, no office air conditioning humming between words. Just two women who'd faced their flaws and still chosen to meet again. We talked for hours, about goals, about meaning, about how success doesn't taste right unless you season it with missteps. Somewhere between laughter and confessions, she said, "When I left, I wasn't escaping the job. I was giving myself permission to see who I was without the armor." "I think you taught me that, how to shed armor without losing shape," I replied. She looked out over the skyline, eyes glinting. "So what's next for you?" I told her about a project I'd been developing quietly, a mentorship program for young women entering marketing, focusing on leadership without apology. She listened intently, then raised her glass. "That, Emily, is what yelling for the right things looks like." Maybe it was the wine, maybe nostalgia, but something eased open in me. "Claire, if you hadn't been in that car that day, you'd still have found your way," she finished. "But perhaps it would have taken longer." The conversation drifted toward future possibilities. I learned she might relocate back within the year, consulting remotely half the time. We promised to keep in touch. Genuine promises, not the hollow kind traded at conferences. When we finally stood to leave, she hugged me. It wasn't the brisk professional hug we'd once shared, but something steadier, laden with recognition. Driving home that night, I caught every yellow light perfectly. A small miracle compared to that first chaotic day. The city hummed, impatient as ever, yet I felt entirely at peace. The constraints of the past, the fear of mistakes, of losing face, had dissolved. I thought about how lives intersect like weaving traffic, collisions transforming into lessons if you're lucky enough to survive them. Months blurred into a new season. My mentorship program launched, gaining traction faster than expected. Claire sent feedback from abroad, her notes precise and ridiculous in the same breath. Consider adding metrics, followed by, proud of you, road rager. Each email ended with an emoji of a car horn. I'd grin every time. Then one autumn afternoon, a delivery arrived at my desk. A tiny potted orange tree with a tag that read, Integrity, Drive, Empathy. See. I set it by the window where sunlight caught its leaves. When coworkers asked who sent it, I just said, an old manager who taught me about direction. Sometimes I wonder what another fork in the road might have given us if timing were kinder. But maybe connection doesn't need ownership to matter. Maybe its meaning lies exactly where it began, in a traffic jam, born of frustration, carried forward as transformation. Now, whenever the morning commute turns feral, when horns scream and patience frays, I grip the wheel, breathe, and whisper to the air, easy, Emily. The best outcomes start with the worst timing, and without fail, a calm laugh bubbles up. That stranger in traffic became the mirror I didn't know I needed, the one that taught me grace under chaos, humility under pressure, and the strength to yell when silence used to swallow me. Claire would probably call it a perfectly branded personal redefinition. I just call it what it is, the story of how I found myself, one honk at a time.